Check, check.
Here we are. Okay.
Propelify. What up?
How's everybody doing? All right. Is anyone as cold as I am? Yeah. All right.
Shout out Aaron Price and the Propelify team. We are the storm. Did you guys see that on the social channels? Now that's responsive.
Yeah, but you need to have the rain gear as well to go along with the storm.
I got the rain gear.
So it's great to be here. My name is Jill Johnson. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of the Institute for Entrepreneurial Leadership. We're a not-for-profit organization, and our focus is in helping entrepreneurs who are under-resourced, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, but entrepreneurs who tend to be under-resourced to get access to the knowledge, networks, and capital that make success even possible. So very excited to be here talking to you today.
Thank you.
And I would have to give a little correction to that earlier introduction that I think Gary Vaynerchuk would like to be as cool as John Henry. So,
Thank you.
So John, as we talk today, I'm going to ask you to integrate your story,
Yeah.
but I want to start with the end first.
Okay.
In your work, your life's work, all, what is it, 20-something years of it?
Yep. 1,000 founders we're investing in over 20 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So in your work, what is it that you want people to take away? What is it that you want the message of the work that you're doing to have on people?
It's a great question, and thank you again for being here with me. It's special to me. I love this event. I come every year. As long as Aaron will have me, I'm coming back. But my mission pretty much is pretty simple. I grew up below the poverty line. I grew up broke as fuck. I don't know what else to tell you. You know, youngest of four. You know, both of my parents combined didn't make $30,000 a year, and we grew up uptown, Washington Heights. You know, we went through the kind of stuff that you see in the 90s in New York. You know, I have members of my immediate family that were a little bit older when we were coming up in that era, and so went down different paths. And somehow I'm here now. And it's not lost on me that the statistical odds were greatly against this happening. And so I try to make sense of that. And I think my life's entire work is to rectify that, make sense of it, and help other folks in that position find their way. And so that manifests to me. I'm a partner at a fund called Harlem Capital. Some of you guys may be familiar with our work. We are a fund that invests in women and minority founders. We are anchored by TPG. It's a $100 billion fund, one of the largest funds in the world. KKR, and we have some of the most impressive investors that I greatly admire. That, by the way, you don't know these people. If Henry Kravis walked in here right now, no one would, swarm up to him like they would Gary, but Henry runs the world, and so how is it that a college dropout kid with, no formal experience ends up being invested in by a guy like Henry Kravis or a woman like Linnea Roberts?
Let's get to that story though.
Yeah.
Because I think that people often see, the glitz and the glamour now, right? You're kind of up here. But let's start with it when you were a doorman, opening people's doors, right? As they were coming in and going out. That's not a glamorous job. How did you get from there to here?
Yeah, and so for context, so after I finished high school, I was really hungry, just looking to do any damn thing to make it pop. And I didn't know entrepreneurship and, all the lingo and all this hot stuff. I just knew that I wanted to take care of my mom. And at that time, you can't be what you can't see. And so at that time, I was just exposed as a youngin' to a guy in a suit opening and closing a door. And I saw that he made, decent amount of cash at that time. And so I pursued that, became a doorman, and opening up doors for people opened up doors for me. And that was what changed a lot of my path, because I met folks that were millionaires. I first doorman on Wall Street, and I didn't resonate with the old white money. I liked them and actually really genuinely believe that there is a gross amount of misunderstanding. I remember I used to work on Wall Street. I used to take pride that I doorman on Wall Street. I'd be like, yeah, I work on Wall Street. But and that was at the time that Occupy Wall Street was going down. And I remember a specific day I was walking down Wall Street and there was a protest that we are the 99%. And I look and I see my brother. And I was like, yo, what's up, bro? And I walked past him into one of the only residential buildings on Wall Street. And, you know, you can decide to get swept up in public sentiment, or you can take care to arrive at your own conclusion based on your own observation. And I noticed that a lot of the people that these folks were outside picketing were actually good, well-meaning people that were focused on their craft. So anyway, that was a big moment for me. And then later on, I kind of, when I doormanned in Brooklyn, was exposed to people of all different walks of life that became very successful doing exactly what they wanted to do. And that was a moment when I realized, okay, I'm not going to copy anyone else's blueprint. My life is going to be by design. I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want to do, not in the way, not in a way to say like, hey, I'm doing it like, you know, I'm going to do whatever I want, like in a rude, brash way, but rather we can design a life where you can be an investor and in media and actually, you know, like Donald Glover. I'm trying to be the Donald Glover of business, you know? Like he was Childish Gambino and then he dropped Atlanta and it was really good. And then he dropped, you know, This Is America. Hey, and I was like, oh my, like he's just creating on the highest levels across mediums. It's really difficult to put him in a box. And that's the kind of career that I resonate with.
So, you know, I want to push back on this concept for a minute of doing it all on your terms, right? Hard to put yourself maybe in someone else's shoes, but can you do it all as a woman?
Only if you believe you can.
Only if you believe you can. Now we get a clap here.
Well, can you do it all as a kid who grew up Section 8, broke, who inherited bad credit, whose parents immigrated here in creative ways? I'll leave that to your imagination. You know, like, yeah, you know. And look, for as much shit as white males are getting now, because like now there's like a diversity wave, and I'm sure white guys are like, dude, what the fuck? Like I haven't, you know, I get it. I run a diversity focused fund, and I'm actually mindful that inclusion doesn't mean exclusion.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I'm very mindful of that. And also, now that I've seen more, I used to think you were rich. We grew up so broke that I used to think you were rich if you had your own room. Mm-hmm. And like now that I've seen more, I realize like, okay, we actually all, you know, relatively speaking, face similar challenges. And so, yeah, there might be some systemic advantages based on the way the country was built. You know, if you come from certain socioeconomic status, zip codes, last names, but by and large, can you make it rests largely on if you believe you can.
Yep, so let's talk about that for a minute,
opinion.
because there's a mindset, right, of doing it all and what that means. So I have 4 children, right, 4 sons. Football, the sports, all that kind of stuff, right? You have to do what you have to do. So there are times when I was taking a business meeting when my kids were real young, and I was in the bathroom so that the kids couldn't come in, lock the door, do a call, and get done what you had to do. Talk about a time when there was something that for you seemed insurmountable or difficult, and you just had to put it on your back and get it done and make it happen.
Yeah, and I think what you bring up is a very valid point. And I don't mean my answer. I think perhaps because I speak in these little sound bites, I've been media trained. I don't mean to discount the fact that there are very real disadvantages that oftentimes we have no direct control over. A lot of stuff is just macro. And or, you know, you might be a mother. Like, things are certainly more difficult, you know, but at some point you realize, you know, there are people that took the same hand you're complaining about and won with it. And the moment one person with your hand won with it, then you know it's possible. But then, so I guess to your question, I've felt imposter syndrome many a times over and over again. I feel it right now. I am in a world right now, like, for as much as the general public perceives me as investor, I think clearly, I'm, not a classic investor type. And now I'm in the room with masters of the universe. Literally the most successful investors ever, running $100 billion plus funds. And I'm in the room and I'm like realizing that these kinds of conversations in rooms, like they're not even talked about. And for as much as TechCrunch and Fast Company glorifies the startup world, like I learned about business through the startup world. And when you're in the startup world, you feel like the entire world is the startup land. But like, guys, there are trillions of dollars of capital flowing around and controlling absolutely everything that happens. And when you're in, I just feel like an imposter in this room. Like, and so I'm at a very interesting pivotal point in my career right now where, and I can't speak on Harlem Capital's fundraise publicly, but know that we set out a target for our fund. We've exceeded that target. We'll announce it in November. It's going to make a splash. Hopefully it'll travel far. We can invest in some diverse founders. But point being, I can't help but to feel like a complete outsider crossing in. And this is the time where if I want to be a classic finance guy and double down and get to the point where, you can be a billionaire, I would have to decide to do so now. And I'm actively deliberating on it because I don't know that I feel like a purebred finance guy. And I don't want to look back and be like, damn, that was the boat this was my time. So I'm embarking on a scarier path, going back to doing it my own way. Am I going to look back and be like, damn, instead of making content and like getting likes on Instagram and being more recognized, like should I have been more focused on the lower key, intellectually honest work? Like right now I have a show on Vice. Maybe some of you guys watch it. It's called Hustle. It's executive produced by Alicia Keys and Marcus Samuelson. And I help businesses grow. Like right now, that's cool as fuck. Like I'm on air. Cool. I had a billboard on Times Square and we had 200 stops all over the city. And like, it's really easy to lean into that and play to that and be like, yo, this is awesome. But you can win in the micro and lose in the macro. And I just got chills right now saying that because I'm just reflecting honestly in real time with you guys that, I don't know. Am I making the right decisions? Only time will tell.
Yeah, and so the question is in doing that, how are you positioning yourself to be that Henry Kravitz, right?
Yeah, I don't know, right? It's, I think I want to be more like Jobs, I don't know if you guys have ever read Jobs' autobiography, or I guess biography written by Walter Isaacs, but he walked around India barefoot and did drugs and smelled terribly. And, I'm not advocating those things. I'm just saying, like, he, through being very much himself, found his own colossal footprint on the world. And, like, that would be my great hope.
So we come from, we're actually two different generations, right? So what is it, do you think, about your generation that enables you to have this, I'm going to do it my way and on my terms? And long term, does that really work?
I think it works. It's working for me so far. And I do think the reason it is a generational shift is because of the mobile device. Just because, like, there's a lot of talk about this, obviously. It's nothing new, but the playground is indeed equalized. And the art of the flip cannot and should not be underestimated. Like, guys, I started by doing this and flipped this iPhone video into proper video, into a meetup, into the very first like large media production that I did is I hosted a podcast for eBay that was produced by Gimlet Media, open for business, which, I got paid handsomely for. Didn't even know you could get paid to do something that I would do for free because eBay was like, hey, we want to broadcast you to our millions of users and we want to pay you for it. Light bulb moment, okay. And then that turned into, I did something for the Washington Post, and slowly your projects flip up, and then eventually, you land, was fortunate to land on, let's say, a cable network. Now that show is distributed internationally. We're in 8 different markets. We're in Berlin, Amsterdam, France. We're in Toronto, Israel. And, it just is, it's never lost on me that started with this. So it's like, are you willing to go through the temporary discomfort and feeling like an idiot for 2 years? Because the beginning stage of anything looks really stupid. It just does. Like when you first get in the gym, and the gym bro walks up and he's like super fit, and you're like, damn, and you feel stupid being a beginner at anything. So if you're willing to just be comfortable with that for a couple of years, eventually it all flips up and flips up. This is what you call a flip. 10 keys from a quad of brick. Bentley from a mama whip. So, yeah, the art of the flip.
The art of the flip. And I think now there are so many more opportunities to make your own way.
Yeah.
Is it because of that it is possible to actually do things on your own terms, where in my generation it was play by the rules,
right.
Go by the book, do what you're supposed to do. And I think that there are a lot of us who saw that actually didn't work, and it didn't get us to where we wanted to be.
I think that's an excellent point, because I think systemically the infrastructure that was put in place, even as recently as 15 years ago, 10 years ago, was not as conducive to being this trailblazer. But the cool thing is you can be 40 or 50 or 60 even, and take the fact that you have more experience than these youngins, right? Us youngins, who really don't know shit, and we're out here like, oh, I'm gonna train, we're just speaking boldly. What we do is just talk really brashly until people believe us. But if you can take your actual experience that you legitimately have and have earned, you got your stripes, and you can then, adapt and play this, you can do whatever you want game, then I think the possibilities are boundless. Because I do think that there is, a very large segment of the population that is looking for someone like them, always. So anyway, it's not just a young person's game is what I'm trying to say.
Once I learned how to do the one-handed selfie, I was put on a little different path with that. So talk about what's next. What's the vision, and especially related to Harlem, the work at Harlem Capital, and getting capital into the hands of people who often haven't had it?
Yeah. Well, what's next? I don't really think in like 5-year window. I think in like 40-year windows, or like this week. And like right now, we're laser focused on closing our fund. By the way, a lot of people, said that like diversity focused investing couldn't be an actual institutionalized investment subset, because it's a weird thing. There is industry focused investing. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Real estate, I'm going to know everything about real estate and what have you. Healthcare. But like to be a generalist investor with a diversity lens was something that generally was thought to be fluffy. And now that we have the premier institution that's backing us, I think we're going to prove that diversity-focused investing is here to stay. And so that is our absolute focus. And then, beyond that, some of you guys who follow me know that I love buying real estate. I love buying real estate. I want to buy back the block. I want to go to the same building where we had housing in and buy that shit. Because to me, there's so much power in ownership. And this is something that the startup community actually doesn't talk about. I learned this outside the startup community. Startup community is all about raising money, and there's a gross, absolutely horrific amount of emphasis placed on raising money, to the point where people are more focused on raising it than making it. It's a weird phenomenon, which is weird for me to say because I'm in the venture game. However, separate from the startup world, there's a whole world abroad. And ownership is the way that you can chip away at the equity imbalance. And I'm very focused on ownership. I want to be the largest Dominican landlord in the country. And Yeah, shout out, shout out, shout out, shout out. Appreciate that. And that's one of my biggest focuses right now.
Excellent. Well, it has been great talking with
Thank you.
And I want to leave people with this thought. You know, you mentioned the need for the focus on diversity and inclusion, and that is a lens that should be considered just like any other. And I really want to challenge everyone who's in this room, who's in this space, to also view the world through that lens, because it's not just the responsibility of people who look like us, it's everyone who says that they care about it. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And shout out to all my white guys, white males. We still love y'all. All right, peace. Thank you.